I decided to run again because in 2011, when His Holiness the Dalai Lama decided to devolve all his political authorities to the elected Sikyong, I happened to be given the responsibilities by the Tibetan people. In the last 4 years, things have gone relatively smoothly because compared to 2010 and 11, when people were very anxious as to what would happen, because this is a major change in historical context, because 400 years of history of the institution of Dalai Lama was making a dramatic shift, and also for the people to even visualize, imagine political leadership without His Holiness was quite challenging. And at that time, His Holiness prophesied that in due course, Tibetan people will come to accept his decision. Now, over 4 years, I think Lord has calmed down and the transition has gone smoothly. So this historical transition is very important. If I give you an example, it's almost like laying the foundation of a house. So once the foundation is solid, now I want to build the first floor in the next 5 years. Once the foundation is solid, first floor is built, rest of the floors will be relatively and much easier to future Sikyong. And I want to complete what I have begun, and especially the responsibilities given to me by His Holiness Dalai Lama in a very crucial time. Secondly, the relationship between Tibetans inside Tibet and CTA has grown proportionately higher, mainly because His Holiness Dalai Lama devolved his political authority to me. Now, a lot of prayers being said by monks and nuns in Tibet, a lot of songs being sang by singers, and unfortunately and sadly, some of them have even gone to prison for that. And a lot of letters being received from inside Tibet. Hence, the bond and the relationship between Tibetan inside Tibet and CTA has grown stronger. And that needs to be continued, and hence we can have sense of solidarity and unity with Tibet inside and outside Tibet. So that also needs to be consolidated and strengthened. Third, as far as international relations is concerned, we have made some inroads because my position is very political. It's called Sikyong, a political head. Having traveled to around 20 countries, I have made a lot of contacts, a network and relationship in the last 4 years. And we have set some important precedents. And a lot are not being said in the media or out in the public. Relationship with European countries, or US, or Japan, or hence this needs to be continued, and especially exposure and interest and coverage of international media has also grown relatively more on the higher trajectory. That also needs to be continued. And fourth, India is very important because the largest number of Tibetans are in India. CTA is based in India. That needs to be consolidated as well. So the relationship with the Indian authorities and the people have also improved considerably. So that needs to continue. And the fifth and the final one is that CTA in itself has gotten a solid footing in the last 5 years. And its policy, middle way approach, is being supported by international community. Specifically, we know that the White House has clearly said they applaud and support the middle way policy. And the recently, during President Xi Jinping's visit to the US, President Barack Obama publicly in the press conference said that Chinese authorities need to engage in dialogue with His Holiness Dalai Lama or his representatives. That's as high as it can get as far as political support is concerned. Similarly, the President of European Union, Donald Tusk, have also said the same thing in the press conference publicly to the Chinese Prime Minister Li Keqiang. So you can clearly see the foothold of CTA and the profile of CTA has increased, so has the support for the middle way policy. So for these 5 big reasons, I want to continue so that we can consolidate all these things. Hence, Tibetan peoples inside Tibet and outside Tibet, they've trusted me at the critical time in 2011, and I hope they'll trust me again. It's for the Tibetan people to decide. Because last time I was as far as conventional wisdom was concerned, I had the least chance, but I proved the conventional wisdom wrong. So it's for the Tibetan people to decide. And I fully know and trust that they will make the right decision, whichever way they decide. And I'll respect that. Another 5 points, if I may, to say that these are some of the achievements. One, we said education is #1 priority. Accordingly, in the last 4 years, clearly, if you look at the results of Class 12 exam, which is the senior level, you can clearly see it has improved. For example, in 2010, we had 127 students who scored more than 75%. Last year, we had 321 students, which is a 150% increase. And this year, we have 443 students who scored more than 75% in all India senior secondary exam. So in last 4 years, there's a 250% increase in the performance level of Tibetan students. And we never had any student who scored 95% before. So we had 1 in 2013, we had 1 this year, and I think there's good news that someone has scored 97%, even at the undergraduate level. So we can clearly see 90%, 95%. So, and we are very confident that it will keep improving because we are focusing at early grade reading from pre-primary to primary to middle to senior secondary school. And as far as funding of CTA is concerned, in 1999, 2000, we used to have 1,000 million rupees a year. That was our CTS budget till recently. Every year, it's around 1,000 million rupees. This year, it was increased to 2,008 million rupees. We have almost doubled the funding. So, we will keep improving that. And third, as far as the sustainable settlement is concerned, we have made a lot of efforts in organic, non-organic farming for unemployed youth. And also, we will be doing entrepreneurship program, which will be the next big thing. So we have a lot of plans as far as sustainable settlements are concerned. And as far as health program is concerned, through this Tibetan Medicare system, last year, we managed to compensate more than 1,000 Tibetans because through the Medicare, last year we had around 13,000 Tibetans who enrolled in the Medicare. This year it's increased to 21,000. So our goal is 50,000. Once we do that, up to 100,000 rupees will be subsidized by the health department. I think this program is picking up and it will improve and help a lot of Tibetans who are in the middle class, low middle class, and the poor section of the Tibetan community. And then, obviously, the security of the sovereign is very important, and both from manpower and from technology, we are improving as much as we could, and thanks to the Indian government and various other governments, they have extended as much support and as high as they can, for which we are very grateful. So, and most important, obviously, our religion is our soul. Our language is key, and our culture is the essential component of who Tibetans are. So this ought to not only be preserved, promoted, but also thrived, so that one day soon we can take it back to Tibet and restore our authentic practice of our culture and pure Tibetan language and the soul of the Tibetan civilization, our religion. Obviously, I have listed all the achievements. Now, correspondingly, in these achievements, I can say we need to do more to improve education, both at the administrative level, at the facilities level, at the teachers training level, inspiring students and engaging parents. For the first time, we had parents meeting. A lot needs to be done. And as far as economy is also concerned, I think from 1,000 million rupees to 2,000 million rupees sounds good, but it's not enough. We need to improve more. And as far as the revitalization or sustainable settlements are concerned, it's a common challenge that the Tibetan youth are moving from the rural Tibetan settlements to urban areas, from urban areas to Europe and US and different parts of the world. And how do we keep the youth, those who want to stay in India, engage them, employ them? That remains a constant challenge. And obviously, our religion, as far as religion is concerned, we have achieved quite a lot. Most of the major monasteries destroyed in Tibet were rebuilt and revived in exile. But again, culture, our language is a constant challenge in this globalized world, in this modern world, in modern technology and social network. All these are getting diluted and compromised as well. So how do we constantly adapt with the modern world, yet remain truly authentic Tibetan with our own culture, language, and civilization? These are all constant challenges. And being in exile, it's called Tibetan struggle. I think the word struggle is apt. Every day, every week, every month, it's a struggle. As long as we keep struggling, and I say, this 4S strategy. First, we need to survive as CTA. CTA is the center of the Tibetan movement. We need to survive. Then we need to strengthen education, economic, from spiritual, cultural point of view, from identity point of view. As long as we strengthen ourselves, and if we are self-reliant economically, politically, spiritually, then we have to sustain. Once we sustain for a long time, till the day China changes, we will succeed. So this 4 strategy will work. So hence I call this Tibet 550, because any administration, whether you are elected as a member of parliament or Sikyong, you have 5 years term. During that 5 years term, based on our policy of middle way, we must do everything possible to engage in dialogue with the Chinese government to get genuine autonomy for the Tibetan people. So that's the primary political objective of CTA. Having said that, as we say, hope for the best and prepare for the worst. If we are to remain in exile for another 50 years, we have to survive, we have to strengthen, we have to sustain. So in 50 years, China will change, and then we will succeed as well. So either way, you succeed in 5 or you succeed in 50. So as long as you strengthen the 50 part, it helps the 5 part. Because you strengthen, you consolidate CTA, then what happens is that China will take us seriously and they'll engage in this 5 in dialogue. So it's a model for success, either way. As a Sikyong, I fervently believe and support and implement Umelam, the middle way approach. And then we did a survey of Tibetans. We found that 51% of Tibetans knew about Umelam, which means almost 49% of Tibetans didn't know much about Umelam. So we launched this awareness campaign where Sikyong included all the Kaluans and their secretaries, traveled to all the Tibetan settlements, all the schools and monasteries to create awareness about the Umelam and the middle way approach. Now we would like to believe that the awareness and knowledge about Umelam has increased considerably among Tibetans. Similarly, in 2014 June, we had this press conference where more than 30-some media people came, and accordingly, in the English language medium, I think nearly 30-some major newspapers from New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, South China Morning Post, in India, NDTV, all covered. We got, I would like to say, $1 million worth of media coverage. So that's extensive. And then through the website we created in Tibetan, English, Chinese, German, and other languages, has created this global awareness and the knowledge about the middle way policy. Because when I traveled to Delhi, even I met some embassy people who saw the middle way campaign website, and they knew about it. And we got information that many Chinese inside China and outside China have new awareness and deeper understanding of middle way approach. Hence, they have publicly stated that they would like to support. And then we really appreciate the fact that the White House of the United States of America came out very strongly in 2011, especially in 2014, where they said they applaud the middle way approach and they support the middle way approach. That's as high as a political support can get in this world, for which we are really, really appreciative. We have compiled 2 books on various resolutions passed in different parliaments and statements issued by different governments. You will find that in 1959, 61, and 65, 3 resolutions were passed in the United Nations General Assembly. Other than these 3 major resolutions in the United Nations, there were no other resolutions till 1987-88. So you can clearly see, since we adopted the middle way policy, we have more than 100 resolutions and statements passed by different governments around the world. It clearly shows that support for middle way policy, especially dialogue between the envoys of His Holiness Dalai Lama and the Chinese authorities have grown, which by extension is a support for middle way approach. And I would like to thank all the governments, and especially in 2015, United States Senate and the House passed 2 resolutions, obviously celebrating His Holiness' 80th birthday, but clearly mentioning support for dialogue with the Chinese government, and especially calling on the US government to recognize Tibetan democracy upcoming election for the leader of the Central Tibetan Administration, the Sikyong. Clearly you can see the United States Senate and the House coming in support of the Tibetan democracy as a gift from His Holiness Dalai Lama. Obviously, we have 3 fronts approach actually. One, given the patriotism, sense of unity and solidarity of Tibetans inside Tibet, even after 50 plus years, their sense of courage, their sense of commitment to the Tibetan cause have not only not diminished, but rather increased considerably. And their sacrifice through self-immolation, and 142 Tibetans have committed self-immolation, you can clearly see the Chinese government is also noticing that Tibet issue has to be dealt with. And hence, we propose middle way policy as a win-win proposition for the Chinese government and the Tibetan people. So given the commitment of the Tibetan people, which has only grown stronger because the younger generation of Tibetans who have never seen His Holiness Dalai Lama or Central Tibetan Administration continue to speak up for the issue of Tibet and Tibetan freedom. Increasing number of Chinese, Buddhists included, and Chinese people are coming to realize the importance of Tibet issue, and hence many are speaking inside China and as well as writing about Tibet to the Chinese government that we ought to solve this issue of Tibet. And the Chinese government also realized that, and that's why the Chinese government has issued 14 white papers on the issue of Tibet, 13 specifically on Tibet, and one on minorities, so-called minorities, which has a major portion on Tibet. So even the Chinese government recognizes Tibet as important, hence they have issued 14 white papers. Compared to others, we have the most white papers. So they also recognize it as important. Now, how to go about solving the issue of Tibet? Hardline policies have never worked and will never work in future. Only way is the middle way approach. Third approach, obviously, India and the international community to continue to press on the Chinese government to support middle way policy. And then, as I mentioned, the US and European countries and many countries have passed resolutions and statements on the issue of middle way. So this three-pronged approach will continue. Tibet inside Tibet, Chinese in China, and the Chinese government, and international community, and India. The three guiding principles of my administrations are unity, innovation, and self-reliance. Unity, I say, non-regional, non-sectarian, non-gender. And then obviously there are other elements to it. So gender equality, women empowerment are very important. So we have programs in CTA to do that. Not only that, actually, if you look at 7 of my colleagues' cabinet, I've appointed 2 women, one to take care of the home department, which is the largest department. And the second largest department is the international relations. Both are led by very capable women. So you can clearly see that I trust it, that they would do a good job. In 4 years, they have done a very good job. Then if you go down, you will find, even in education, I mentioned about schools. Now, there are more girls graduating from high schools than boys. There are more girls getting scholarship when they go to college than boys. And in fact, there are more women in the postgraduate level, MA, MPhil, and PhD, than men. So you can clearly see education also they are doing well. Economically, Tibetan women have always done well. They have always, equally participated in income-generating activities. So Tibetan women, by and large, are doing relatively well. But then, we continue to improve and keep providing facilities. Tibet Support Groups have always played a vital role in the Tibetan freedom movement. And because of their support, I think the profile of the Tibetan movement have always been high and widespread, because we are just 150,000 Tibetans in exile. But then, by extension, those who are in all the Buddhist centers around the world and Tibet Support Groups around the world, they have always magnified our profile and increased the volume of the Tibetan voice around the world. So Tibet Support Groups have always done a tremendous job. And then we also have Tibet Support Groups in India, supported by the Indian people, for which we are very grateful as well. So I always see Central Tibetan Administration as the center, the primary voice, and Tibet Support Group as the secondary supportive voice, and they have always been very important supporters. And I want to extend all the gray-haired Tibet Support Group members around the world and urge them to continue the march. And all the new blood and new supporters who are coming along in the Tibetan global movement, we will keep marching because the destination is very near, and we will reach there together and celebrate very soon in Lhasa.